Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for New's second digital event in our new conversation series. This one entitled, Building Back New York City with Inclusivity. We're thrilled to have our panel of exceptional leaders in the construction industry with us today to discuss the importance of advancing equity and inclusion as we continue to build back and build our New York City. Thank you to Liz Velez, President of the Velez Organization, for moderating today's panel. And thank you to all of our panelists. Maggie Austin, Senior Advisor to the Mayor and Director of the Mayor's Office of Minority and Business Enterprises. Cheryl McKissick-Daniel, President and CEO of McKissick & McKissick. Gary LaBarbera, President of the Building and Construction Trades Council of Greater New York. Joe Mizzi, President and COO of Sciame Construction. And Tamara Rivera, Council Representative with the New York City District Council of Carpenters and a new graduate. I'd also like to again thank all of our donors and extend a special thank you to our sponsors for supporting today's event. They are Turner Construction Company, Sciame Construction, Hannigan Construction, Kauf McGuire Margulies, Cagney, and the Velez Organization. And I'm excited to announce that we have raised over $32,000 for this event so far. Each dollar we raise today goes towards building the next generation of tradeswomen. And your gift to New can make that difference. You can text Hard Hat to 44321 or click the donation link in our chat box. I'm excited that today's conversation is about advancing diversity and inclusion, which is at the core of New's mission and work. I look forward to hearing from today's panelists about how the construction industry can continue to lead, innovate, and move forward on this critical issue. Thank you again for joining us for our second of many New conversations. We're so happy to have you with us. Now, before we hear from New's Board Chair Pat DiFilippo and move to our panel discussion, please join me in viewing a short video about New's impact. Thank you.
New has impacted my life immensely. I was always told, you're too short, you're too skinny, you're too weak, you can't do it. You don't feel that here. You feel strong.
When you leave here and you graduate, you know you can do it. Like, they definitely put you in a position to get into the trades.
This is a viable career opportunity, something that you can do and raise your family with, and something that's really enjoyable and fulfilling to do.
This career has changed my life dramatically, not just for myself, but for my two sons as well.
The security of starting a career and not just a job means a whole lot to me and to my family.
Union apprenticeship is the start of a new path for me. It's stability, it's equality, and it's solidarity.
No matter where I go, I know I'm representing New.
Every single contractor that hires our women hires more.
Seeing your wages increase, your benefits, your pension, your annuity, all of those things have changed my life in a drastic way. And the union provides all of that.
New really fights for you. They make sure you are really well trained.
If it wasn't for New, I wouldn't be where I am.
If it weren't for them, women wouldn't be breaking barriers that they are breaking today.
We truly, truly transform the lives of our women.
Please join me in welcoming Executive Vice President of Turner Construction Company and New's Board Chair, Pat DiFilippo.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that video because it really represents what new is all about. And that's providing an equal representation of women in the construction workforce and to transform their lives. In over 40 years, new has been providing that support to these women in the workforce. Today, welcome to our second new conversations. We started doing this obviously as a result of COVID, and we're really happy that you're with us to join us today. We have a very interesting topic, building back New York City with inclusivity, with the challenges we all experienced with COVID and with the horrific situation that took place with George Floyd. And to have these two topics interchange and join together, it's going to be a very interesting conversation. We have panelists today who I know care deeply about making sure inclusivity is a part of our business as we move forward. I want to thank our panelists for joining us because they are leaders in our industry, they are well respected, and their voice should be heard. In addition to that, I want to thank Elizabeth Velez for volunteering to moderate today's panel. We're happy to have you along, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. And I want to thank, particularly want to thank Labor, Gary LaBarbera, for joining us today. Labor has been our partners every step of the way. We have a lot of work to do, but we know we have our partners in Labor to help us along the way. So with that, Elizabeth, I want to turn it over to you to get started.
Are we good? Are we live? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Pat, for those words, and thank you for the work that you do on behalf of New. We have had a great time working with New staff to put together a real jam-packed, timely conversation. My name is Elizabeth Velez. I am president of the Velez Organization, a second-generation construction firm, always based here in New York City. I'm also the chair of the New York Building Congress, and so I'm thrilled and want to applaud New for spearheading not only this very important but essential discussion on building back with inclusivity. I'm going to tell you something we all know. We are facing the most challenging of times, a global, insidious health crisis, which has brought on what promises to be, unfortunately, a protracted economic crisis. A social justice crisis, which has brought into focus long simmering systemic racial fissures. And so we have assembled here an all-star panel of leaders in the construction industry to discuss what we need to do right now to remove implicit and explicit barriers that exist. Why? Why is this conversation so important? Because these crises have revealed the health, wealth, and unacceptable racial inequities that exist, and the disastrous and disproportionate impact they have on communities of color. Because these disparities do not just hurt select communities, but they hurt our entire city. Because removing bias and promoting inclusion is directly correlated to not only a stronger economy, but a stronger, more strategic bottom line. Because a sustainable, inclusive, and prosperous world of the future cannot be only for some. It's the responsibility of everyone to be sure that it is for all of us. And because we are New Yorkers and we have before us a moral imperative for immediate action. For me, this discussion is personal. We on this call, on this Zoom call, are all blessed to be a part of an industry that literally and figuratively builds our world. An industry that provided my father, Andrew, a pathway to a successful legacy, a career launched by the District Council of Carpenters in 1962, leading to a life commitment that paved the way for so many, including me. And so many of us are in our fight for survival right now. So we have a stellar panel of leaders in diversity and leaders in construction. And during this time together, we hope to work together as a collective with you for real and meaningful change. As stated before, our panel includes Maggie Austin, Senior Advisor to the Mayor, Director of the Mayor's Office, of Minority and Women Business Enterprises, Gary LaBarbera, President of the Building and Construction Trades Council of Greater New York, Cheryl McKissick Daniel, President and CEO, McKissick & McKissick, Joe Mizzi, President and Chief Operating Officer for Sciame, and Tamara Rivera, Council Representative for New York City District Council of Carpenters, woohoo, and new graduate. So let's get right into our questions. And feel free to send in your questions as well. We'll get to it at the end. So it was recently announced that unions will prioritize the referral of workers from certain zip codes where 15% of the population lives below the federal poverty level and or are housing authority, NYCHA residents, to reach an overall goal of at least 30% of all hours worked under project labor agreements, PLA projects, that are locked for workers from those zip codes. This is an incredible initiative and an incredible community hire announcement and the first step towards real change as far as diversity and inclusion. So Gary, my first question is to you. Can you elaborate on this phenomenal announcement and share your thoughts on how our industry can follow through and meet the goal challenge and go beyond best efforts?
Okay, let me see. Can you hear me?
Gary?
Okay.
Yeah,
Hi.
we can.
Great. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
Hey there. Good to see you too.
Good to see you, my friend. And Pat, I'd like to also thank you for your opening remarks and your kind comments. And it's a pleasure to be here today with my fellow panelists and all of you. And I'm happy to answer that question because I think it is a historical and a very important moment in the history of the New York City Building Trades Council and the City of New York. We recently announced, Mayor de Blasio, myself, Deputy Mayor Phil Thompson, the conclusion and the signing of what we would call a historic project labor agreement. Why is it historic? Well, for a couple of reasons. It is the largest single project labor agreement we've ever entered into with any public authority. This project labor agreement will cover anywhere between $30 and $40 billion at its completion. It's beyond just city new construction and rehab. It's also going to be HHC and NYCHA and a lot of design build work. So the pipeline of work is more significant than ever before. Now, that's one thing in itself that's historic. The other thing that I think is most important for this conversation is, as part of the negotiations between myself and the City of New York, we talked about what we could do together in a collaboration and a partnership to advance minority hiring and actually try to work together to really create job opportunities that are really careers, which the New York City Building Trades Council provides for in the unionized construction industry. Real true careers. And how could we do this in a manner in which we could really truly serve underserved communities that have never really been served at this level. So it was quite a long negotiation. It was about 10 months of negotiations, but we came up with this idea of creating New York City higher construction careers. And essentially, you're right, what it does is it focuses on areas of New York City, communities in New York City that are at least 15% of the population below the federal poverty line. Now, one of the sad comments I will make is when we looked at the maps, over 50% of communities in the 5 boroughs fall under this auspices, meaning that there's over 15% of poverty on the poverty federal line. So it really gives you a graphic illustration of how serious this issue is of inequality and inequity from community to community. So essentially what we did is we created, again, the largest pipeline of work ever before to be conducted by union contractors and union trades, with the understanding and agreement that we would work closely with New York City, Workforce One, to identify people from these underserved communities that would be first preference referred through all of our pre-apprentice programs and direct entry programs. Obviously, non-traditional employment for women is one of those programs that's actually named in the Project Labor Agreement. And we are going to get underway very, very soon as the work begins to go out to bid. This is something now, I think, that is so critical given what's happening in our city, in our nation. We've been talking about this, I think, in every corner of the industry, in every corner of the city, of how important it is to create work now, put people to work now. And the issue of inequality, I think, has really come to the forefront. And what that means is you can't simply just create a job that is a temporary job that pays $15 an hour. When that job in that community is done, so is the opportunity for those individuals. You need to create jobs that are careers. You need to create career paths. And so this Project Labor Agreement does that. As I said, it's historic in its nature, and we're very excited about it, and we believe it's going to really address and create opportunity for these communities in New York City and the residents of these communities. And I'm very excited about the work that we've done and the support that we've gotten from all of the union affiliates. And I have to say, I'm very pleased with the collaboration we had with the de Blasio administration to reach this goal.
That's great, Gary. And we know that these are careers that we could actually raise families on. And that's so important for all of us in New York City, especially the women that are part of the union trades. And so on that, I'm going to pivot to Tammy. As a graduate of NEW, how do you think this renewed commitment can make positive change for tradeswomen participation on projects throughout New York City?
I think, well, first of all, thank you, Liz. Thank you, NEW, for having me on this great panel with great people, men and women.
I love your picture behind you. Great picture.
Just for all of you. I think if I could say one word, consistency. Everything that we are doing, we have to continue doing and level it up. In other words, besides the carpenters, I know the other trades are doing it too. We're out there doing community outreach. We're doing job fairs, info sessions. We're giving back, especially in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, in Queens, where people are so in need of work. And what we have to offer, you know, I'm a product of NEW. So I'm very passionate about this. So I'm a role model, and I want the men and women from the community to be out there, to be the role model, to show these people that, yes, it's not a dream, it's a reality. Having a career in construction is a reality. I think right now a lot of women still don't know that there's a career in construction unless you're flagging or holding a stop sign. And we need to stop that. So we need to continue doing what we're doing, but even more so. And with this city PLA, you know, we have choices. We can see it either the glass is half full or the glass is half empty. We have to see that the glass is half full and it's keep going up. If we have to go to Albany, we have to lean in. We have to lean in hard. We have to keep talking to the community, our own members, because our own members we have to try to make them more active. So we have to continue funding these organizations like non-traditional employment for women, like Building Works that the Carpenters has, like CWE, Pathways to Apprenticeship, and so all the other pre-apprenticeships that promote careers in construction. As far as the talk out there is, because of this pandemic, you know, it also brings some positivity. People are more grateful that they even have work right now. And as far as the communities out there, there's so many people that are unemployed, that this is a time that they're actually really listening to us and saying, well, what do you have to offer me? They're really, really listening to us. So consistency, everything we've been doing before the pandemic, during the pandemic, developing relationships with faith-based organizations, you know, giving back with food distribution, and just showing ourselves that this is real, because it's devastating for people to see that what's a dream can really be a reality. It's hard to, you get what I'm saying? It's too good to be true, so to speak. And you don't have to pay for a pre-apprenticeship program. that's like unfathomable. Is that the right word? For certain people, especially when you don't have the funds. You don't need the funds. New pays you to go to the program. So, and if we have to hold their hand and guide them, we can do that. So that's what I have to say.
Tammy, you said it so beautifully. You talked about advocacy. I think that's amazing. We don't often talk about that, but we need to advocate for ourselves. And also, you brought up something that made me think of this. You know, construction workers have been essential workers too throughout this entire crisis. And so I thank you for representing us so beautifully out there every day in New York City.
Can I add one more?
Sure.
Just as you just said, essential workers, you know, we're doing everything out there to make the work environment much safer, much cleaner. And we never thought construction would be much cleaner, you know, so that the people, the workers feel comfortable to go back to work. That is important to us.
Thank you for that. Safety is the top of importance for everybody. You're absolutely right. Thank you for bringing that up. Tammy, I think I could just have a conversation with you this whole panel, but I'm going to pivot now to Maggie. Maggie, congratulations on your still kind of new position as Senior Advisor and Director of the Mayor's Office of MWBE. I'm going to ask you a two-part question, if you don't mind. How does New York City encourage diversity, and why is this important to New York City? And then the second part is, how does the city's MWBE initiatives, how do the city's MWBE initiatives with MWBE firms encourage diversity of the workforce? Do we have Maggie?
Yep.
Ah, great. Did you hear the question?
I did hear the question.
Okay, great.
And thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, Kathleen, for inviting me to this important discussion today. And as you said, Elizabeth, in June, the mayor appointed me as the Senior Advisor and Director of the Mayor's Office of MWBEs. Technically, I think I'm still kind of new. It doesn't feel new, though.
Right.
We've done a lot since I've been there. So, and you know, and this is such an honor for me because the issue of equity and access to economic opportunity is such a critical one, especially at this time. And it's something that I've been passionate about throughout my entire professional career. So for those of you who don't know me, by way of my background, for the past almost 6 years, I worked at DDC, which is the city's capital construction manager. And my job was to make sure that we met our MWBE utilization goals. So when I started there in 2014, our utilization was under 10%. By the time I left, I had increased it threefold. So this is something that is very familiar to me and something, again, that I'm passionate about. So the mayor in 2016 created the Mayor's Office of MWBE to make sure that the citywide MWBE program had a central counterpoint. So we oversee all of the city agencies' MWBE program. And to answer your questions, the city encourages diversity through a number of workforce as well as contractor related diversity programs. So the two workforce programs the city has put in place are Hire NYC Human Services and the Sandy Recovery Hiring Program. The Sandy contracts included both federal hiring requirements under Executive Order 11-2046, as well as Section 3. So both of these programs created a significant number of jobs for New Yorkers, and community hiring, which we are hoping to get, will allow us to spread this model to more of our contracts. So a little bit about Hire NYC. So human services vendors are required to hire one public assistance recipient for every $250,000 that they receive in city funds. This program is administered by Business Link, and I'm sure we'll include a link to that website in the chat feature. And Business Link is a free employment service operated by the Human Resource Administration. And the Sandy Recovery and Hiring Plan is a program through my former agency, DDC, that required that when they procured a construction contract above $300,000 and that it is related to Sandy recovery efforts, contractors and subcontractors must include apprenticeship agreements, and they're subject to the outer borough residential PLA. All new contracts, regardless of the value, are required to submit job postings to and interview candidates from the Sandy Recovery Workforce One system. And we also encourage all vendors to employ 20% Sandy impacted residents on their jobs. We also encourage diversity through contracting because research has shown that if we want to diversify our workforce, the place to start is to support diverse businesses. And that's because MWBEs disproportionately hire women and people of color. They are disproportionately located in low-income communities and hire from those communities. So in a number of ways that we do support diversity through contractor diversity is, first simple, is goal setting. So we require that every contract that's procured by the city set an MWBE utilization goal. And if there is no goal, there has to be a specific reason. And it has to be no goals contract has to be approved by the Mayor's Office of Contract Services. So at OMWBE, we oversee the goal setting process at all agencies. Goals provide an important milestone for us as we improve the utilization rate, which is a key performance indicator that we're trending in the right direction on access and diversity, right? And the other important initiative that we have is at the end of July, the mayor signed an executive order 59, which provided a number of directives to support MWBEs. So the Executive Order 59, which you were there, Elizabeth, when we signed this historic EO. So it requires every city agency to appoint a chief diversity officer who will work on this issue, contractor diversity, day in, day out. And the chief diversity officer is a senior staff member who reports directly to the agency head and who's empowered to make decisions about contracts. Essentially, if they believe that a contract is not maximizing MWBE utilization, they can stop that procurement to make sure that the MWBE goal is revised. It also requires that agencies include MWBEs in emergency procurements. And the reason that this is important is that prior to this executive order, there were no goals on emergency procurements. As you know, for the last 6 months, since March, the vast majority of our procurements have been on an emergency basis, and there were no goals included in those contracts. So we're trying to rectify that. So we're making sure that there are goals that are included on emergency procurements, and we're also requiring that agencies get a quote from at least one MWBE. The other tool that we're really grateful for is that last year we had the ability from the state legislature to raise the discretionary purchase amount to $500,000. And what we are doing in this executive order is requiring that all agencies who have procurements that are valued under $500,000 use the MWBE discretionary procurement method, which is really incredible because $500,000 for most small businesses can save that business. And we think that this is an important tool. And The other provision of the executive order is that it requires my office and the Mayor's Office of Contract Services to evaluate all procurements over $25 million to determine if there's an opportunity to break up that contract to create more opportunities for MWBEs. And finally, we also require companies who work on our construction projects to collect demographic data to make sure that a diverse workforce is working on our projects. And why is this important to New York City? So New York City, we are committed to leveraging the city's economic development investments and purchasing power to place more New Yorkers into jobs. And like I said before, through Hire NYC, we ensure that New Yorkers in the workforce one system get a first look on our contracts, and the legislation we're pursuing in Albany for community hiring will give us the power we need to create even more jobs for the people who need it the most. Over 80% of the population of New York City is made up of women and people of color. Ensuring the economic health of the majority of the city is not only a moral imperative, it makes perfect financial sense, Elizabeth. We believe that when minority communities win, New York City wins.
Thank you, Maggie. And thank you for talking about EO 59 and the importance of MWBE, minority and women-owned businesses that hire from the community. So I want to now turn to one of the longest established, one of our best examples of 5 generations, Cheryl McKissick, a phenomenal minority and women business enterprise. Cheryl, we know that diversity is about who you hire, and inclusion is about the respect and acceptance that our employees feel working for us. As a successful M&WBE firm, do you feel that you have a competitive edge with a diverse workforce, and why?
Hi, everyone. I think I'm off of mute.
You are.
This is so exciting. You know, New is so incredible and has made such a big difference in New York and should be a model for the rest of the world to follow. The strides that New has made, you know, since I've been a part of the New York construction community is something to be commended and, you know, to hold in high esteem. You know, Pat, terrific beginning, you know, good partner. And Liz, you know, you are my sister and leader in this industry.
Thank you.
And, you know, we have shared our stories. So it's not much that we don't know about each other.
That's right.
And of course, Maggie and Joe and Gary, you know, Gary and the mayor, kudos to this new PLA that, you know, you have established. I remember, you know, working on the Columbia site, you know, 15 years ago and trying to get people from the community in Harlem on those projects. And I can go down the line on Harlem projects where that was the case. And, you know, we just didn't even know where to start. And so to think of where we are now, and not only are we dealing with the minority issue, but we're dealing with poverty in New York. And, you know, as I travel our country, I always come back and I always say, thank God I live in New York City. This is such a progressive city, and we are change agents for the rest of the country. And it's so important to see what you and the mayor negotiated and put together. And, you know, let's just continue to move forward, regardless of what the rest of the country does. I can't tell you how excited I am. This is going to make our job easier as we're trying to get communities that we work in, the people of those communities, on our projects, which is a very important goal to us. Now, as far as hiring minorities and making sure that, you know, minorities are a part of the conversation going forward, I think it's inherent that, minority and women-owned businesses hire minorities. It's sort of like the law of attraction because it's just familiar. It's something it's comfortable. At McKissick, we are probably 40% minority and women. But I mean, it didn't happen easily at the top. It took a lot of effort to go out into the community and find the high-level experienced executives to come into our company. But it was a concerted effort. And I think that's what it takes, a concerted effort from all of us to make sure, that minorities are a part of the program. It's what you're doing, Maggie, at the city, I think is just incredible. I would like to see everything that you have put in place in the city now be projected on the private industry. We need help from, the Fortune 200 companies as well. If we really want to grow businesses and have longevity when it comes to diversity and inclusion, as far as businesses and as far as the workforce, and strengthen the economy of New York City.
Thank you, Cheryl. And you were talking about leadership from the top, because that's how we change things. And you are one of our top leaders in the construction industry. It's important to be able to make that change through leadership from the top. And in that, I want to pivot to one of our top leaders in the construction industry, Joe Mizzi. And Joe, we know that diversity increases productivity. In what ways through leadership in recruitment and promotion can we create this environment of inclusion? And how important is this conversation for the construction industry today?
Well, it's a critical conversation that has to happen. It has to happen through effort. And I think the concerted effort that Cheryl mentioned and the effort that's being demonstrated by everybody on this call and part of this committee and at NEW, I think is how we get things done. And I think as an industry, we've always worked together to get things done. And I'm proud as a building Congress member, as certainly a partner with Gary and everyone at the building trades. I was looking actually at the Studio Museum in Harlem project that we're working on, which is a project that Gary and myself and Cheryl got together on a couple years ago and said, let's make a PLA that frankly captures some of the things that Gary and Maggie really took to the higher level in the current agreement. Let's make it a new signature project. It's a city-funded project. Let's rely on New York City to fund this. And thank you, Maggie, and the DCLA and DDC and the mayor's office for funding the project in such a significant way. Let's create these partnerships that allow for maximum diversity, equity, and inclusion at the business owner level, at the workforce level, and at the subcontracting level. Let's create opportunities. The $500,000 comment that Maggie made about businesses, let's find these businesses and let's give out work $500,000 and greater. And let's make these a model project, as Cheryl said. I think you can go out in the world and do it a lot of times, or you could do it in New York City in a big way and become a model for the industry, for our country. And my dad was a union plumber, 40 years plus in his life, over 40 years. And so I know the impact that a union apprenticeship and career can provide, and I'm proud to be a member of NEW and to be working on new signature projects. But I think from our end, you pick the business partners and clients you want to work with, and you work with like-minded people, and you stay away from people that don't share the proper ideals that need to be followed. You have a zero tolerance, for any such behavior. And I think on our end, we're fortunate. We're working with the Africa Center doing a major project. We're working with the Emerson Collective, and they've put together a team. Madison Capital, Crescent Consulting, who's an MWBE consultant, and so I think working together and making as many of those projects new signature projects and new projects as well, hiring new members, and we're proud to say we do and we have, and I just think from there's the efforts that Cheryl mentioned, that concerted effort. There's no replacement for setting goals, laying them out, working together to get it done, and demonstrating the way it's to be done. And certainly we're doing that with Gary and everyone at the World Trade Center for the Performing Arts Center, the Perlman Performing Arts Center, which is also a new signature project. So that's the way Sciame Construction and our business partners and our employees are really just trying to lead by example and associate ourselves with the right people. And we're going to demonstrate those results because it's important and it's critical. And I feel strongly on the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
No, that's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing some of your hiring strategies, how you remove bias and are really changing the culture in construction on many of the projects that Sciame is doing. You talk a little bit about accountability, right? Measuring. So just kind of pivoting a question to both Maggie and Gary. The conversation we're having now has great enthusiasm and energy right now because we're in a crisis, especially. Sustainability and accountability, as Joe was saying, are so important. How important and how can we establish sustainable practices to keep this moving forward in the right direction? I'll throw it out to Gary and Maggie. Oh, Gary, we need you to unmute yourself.
Yeah, if Maggie doesn't mind, I'll just jump in a little bit about what we're doing with the city. She can attest to this. So what we've done with the city as part of this is we felt as well that we had to have accountability. We needed to have metrics, we needed to have measurements, and because otherwise this would actually be no more than rhetoric, and I would fear that it would actually backfire on us. And so none of us wanted that to happen, not in the building trades, nor the city of New York. So in the project labor agreement, one of the things that we've done in terms of accountability is, for example, all of the apprentices that will be coming in, there are different forms, anyone that's familiar with this, that go to the New York State Department of Labor. For example, the AT 401, that has a good amount of information about the individual apprentices. We are going to be giving that to the city. So that's one way of identifying the people that are coming in from the communities. The other thing is now the certified payrolls are going to include the zip codes, which is going to be another way of identifying to make sure that we capture those 30 hours, 30% of the hours in the project labor agreement. So that's really a very good way, because these projects are all prevailing wage. You have to have certified payroll. So we'll be able to determine that there are actually 30% of the hours are being allocated to people from those zip codes. And the other thing is that we're going to continue to work, and I think we're going to build upon this in that we're going to be monitoring and identifying metrics in order to create further results that we can make sure that we can measure, and we can create data, and we can document. So there is accountability measures in there. And let me just say, again, in the negotiations, this was a priority to not only the city, but as to the building trades as well. We thought it was very important that our success is quantifiable.
Great answer.
So what we found at the city level is to create sustainability and accountability, there are a number of things. First, you have to create that infrastructure, right? You have to create a process that exists. And then I know for me personally, which I experienced when I went to DDC, is there has to be a culture change that takes place, right? Because people are comfortable doing things the way that they've always done them. Why should they change? It's worked for them. So you have to really work hard, go against the tide and work to create that culture change. And then you also have to remove the barriers to succeed, right? So one of the things the Mayor's Office of MWBE has done is that we've had, and you've been to Albany with us when we've gone to lobby to create, to ask for certain things to be done. So for example, when we increased the discretionary to $500,000, that was something that was huge and we knew that was necessary. So all these three things are necessary, and we also look at our metrics so that we can adjust our methods, right? Sometimes, the numbers, for example, even though the city, for fiscal year 20, in the third quarter, we did reach 30% utilization rate. And you and I have had this discussion, Elizabeth, in that while we're very happy about that 30% utilization rate, it's not well in that 30%. And that's where the metrics come into place, right? What those metrics revealed was that while women-owned and Asian-owned businesses were doing fantastic, Black-owned and Hispanic-owned businesses were not thriving. And so we can sort of adjust our methods and to make sure that everybody benefits within our program.
Great. I think we have so much information. I wish we could have 2 hours for this panel. I wanted to throw something out to Joe or Cheryl as leaders in our industry. How can we reinforce a commitment to inclusion that helps us attract, support, and retain our workforce by diminishing bias? So that's a tough question. There's a lot of meat to that one. If anyone wants to take it.
Well, I mean, like any lofty goal, eliminating bias will take a Herculean effort by all of us, but I think it's a worthy challenge. But I think we have to start by educating ourselves, and I think a lot of organizations are doing internal workshops to help recognize behavioral patterns associated with bias that we don't even realize. And I think we're certainly working to make our job sites, our office space, and our relationships with our business partners, clients, and vendors something that's comfortable and something that is informed. And Cheryl and I are working closely on a number of projects, and she helps me too in terms of, I think we just partner and just try to identify and improve and do the best we can.
That's great.
I just think we have to keep this conversation relevant and keep everyone interested in obtaining the same goal. And we do that by raising awareness. As Joe said, education is probably the number one thing, just understanding what is diversity, what is anti-racism, unconscious bias, all these new terms, and microaggressions. Training, I think, is absolutely essential at the corporate level and out in the field. I think everyone that walks onto a construction site should have some type of training. And then in the trailer, maybe even more extensive training with senior management. Because it is, as Maggie said, it's about changing culture. And then we have to have policies, zero tolerance policies. And if there's an offense, we have to, punish that to the fullest extent possible, so people know that we're not playing about these issues. Right. And some people just don't even realize how serious it really is. And so some of these acts may not be as criminal as others, but we still cannot let anyone get away with some of these acts. I remember seeing things on job sites 20 years ago, and we just come along and remove it and keep on going and never discuss it. I'm so glad that today we actually are taking the time to peel the onion back just a little bit further and, begin to say any aggression against any of us is a problem to all of us. We are a family and a team on a construction site, and one or two bad apples is not going to mess that up.
Thank you for that. I'm promising you guys a real conversation, and this is getting real. I love it. So I know we want to get to some questions from the audience, but I have one last question for Gary, and maybe Tammy wants to comment on it too. We've talked about leadership a lot here in this panel discussion. It's so critical for positive change. And at NEW, they have seen more tradeswomen, specifically Black and Brown, Latinx and Black rise in leadership during this time. What have you seen, and how does BCTC support tradeswomen leadership growth? Oh, Gary.
I did it again. Tammy, you want to start? I'm happy to follow you.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just want to say, again, what Maggie said about changing the culture. That's really, really important. And we have some great subcontractors like Jacobson, Pat Oates, Turner, and they're investing in women in construction. That's what it's about, investing in women in construction. And Jacobson has done that. Not only are they hiring a certain amount of women, they're also putting them in leadership where they can be utilized, not just with their tools, but they're actually investing on what their potential is. Maybe they could be used doing the plans, not just the tools. And of course, if they want it, go for it. And they are. I mean, there are women like Melissa Brown, Nora Vega, Kylie McCoy, and it's not just hiring them, it's keeping them, holding them, and showing that they can do it, and they're moving around. Then there's that saying, we cannot be what we cannot see. So women are seeing these women being moved around, women of color, Latina, African American, and they're running work. They're in the trailers, they're moving around. They're not just, we need more of that. We were going to do a summit of women in construction and try to use Jacobson as a highlight to other subcontractors to show them that here's a huge organization that's, I don't think they're MWBE, and yet they're doing it. So what's to stop us? At the end of the day, it's not about men and women, it's about people having a life, people having a good job, a good career, and being able to live the rest of their life comfortably. But unfortunately, this is the way we have to do it, right, Cheryl? So that's my answer.
And I'll comment and just say this. In any situation in life, I think we put our own restrictions on our goals. We create our own boundaries. In this situation in the industry now, I think because of new, and I think because of the climate that we're in, the boundaries, there are no boundaries. And I'm happy to finally be able to say that. And to Tammy's point, what I see is at every level, in the industry, from the job site, women becoming forepersons, becoming shop stewards, seeing a lot of that, seeing women who are organizers, women who are business agents. So I am really beginning to see the elevation of women in this industry at all levels, from the job site to the unions themselves. And I believe that as more women enter this industry, more women will ascend. And I can tell you, I do not see any hesitation by any of the unions or contractors or developers to advance and give that opportunity to women. So again, we control our own destinies as an industry. We are now more than ever, since the recent events in this country and what's happened, what's really been brought forth. We as an industry are more now than ever talking about these issues. I think Cheryl said it really well. We're finally peeling back the onion. We're having hard conversations, but I believe wholeheartedly that all of this is going in the absolute right direction.
Terrific response. I'm now going to go to some questions from some recent students, new students and graduates, and some questions that we're getting in. So forgive me for this electronic platform as I look up and down, trying to get some of the questions. This is a question for anyone. Given the current state of our COVID existence, is there still a demand for workers? And specifically, is there a need for female union workers now? Yes, says Gary?
Yes, look, yes, there is absolutely a demand for workers. That is the very essence of what we just did with the city of New York, creating literally the first in these two PLAs that I mentioned, the city PLAs, that's $20 billion worth of work. And there are additional project labor agreements that will follow that will be between another 10 and 20. So you have $40 billion worth of work right there. You have major projects that are going to go forward in the JFK redevelopment, despite a lot of what you're reading and seeing. JetBlue is going to go forward. American Airlines on a smaller scale is going forward. Delta, for now, doing 6 new gates. And as a commissioner of the Port Authority, I can tell you we're pushing to get Terminal 1 done. There's other work that is clearly big work that is in the pipeline. It is uncertain. It's a very fair question about what 2022 looks like. But again, we're in the middle of this. But for now and for the next year, year and a half, there is going to be a lot of opportunity to get in this industry. And I will tell you that even if there is a little bit of a dip or some, dip, you have to stick with this industry, because this industry always comes back. The people in this industry are bullish. And what I mean by that, we're hard driving. We never take no for an answer. And that's from the development community, the contracting community, and the unions. There is a bright future in this industry. So fear not and go for it.
I love it. And, Gary, I know that we are all very involved in trying to get infrastructure funds from the federal government, from Washington, to come in and assist with budget shortfalls right now. We're hoping to all work collectively together to bring that in, to keep those positions going and keep New York strong and keep New York going. Coming from—
I just want to add that Terminal
sure.
1 is going ahead. There's some few changes out there, but that's a very big project for the city.
Absolutely. There's a lot of work at JFK. Coming from a mid-sized contractor perspective, is policy and regulation the best way to engage a diverse workforce? Does it have to come through regulation or policy making, or can it be, I guess, more natural? What are your thoughts on that? Anyone?
I can share my thoughts on that, and I think you and I have had conversations about this. So diversity does not happen organically. It truly does not true diversity. I think you know, we all have our own biases, right? And at a time like this, what I think what's happened is that we've all been forced to face it. It's a combination of what's going on with social justice as well as the pandemic, where we're all stuck at home and we, you know, we have more time to examine these things. This is that, to me, there's a role for government in making sure that its most vulnerable population is taken care of by getting good jobs. Because naturally, the human nature is that you hire people that you're comfortable with. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're comfortable with who you're comfortable. So you need that external force to make sure that we say that you question that supposition, right? You have to question it. So personally, I believe that there needs to be that structure in place to make sure that most people have the same opportunities.
Very good. I have to tell you.
I would just like to add that, you know, we live in a capitalist society. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. We are all capital, at least I am. We are all capitalists. But what COVID did was stop capitalism in its tracks. And it made us think about humanity first. And, you know, that to me is essential for a good capitalist system to work. And so can it come from the heart? Yes. Will it come from the heart? I don't know. Thank you, Maggie.
I actually have a quick question for Maggie. Does EO 59 apply to material suppliers or just contractors?
So at the moment, it doesn't, only because local law 1 only has limits on whether it counts towards utilization. So it's really just contractors.
Okay. We have to change that, I think, for the city to be more like the state and include material suppliers as well.
I agree, and it's on our legislative agenda.
Oh, terrific. That sounds great. I encourage everyone to look at the chats because there are accolades all over the place for not only this tremendous panel, but also for the incredible work that NEW does. And so consider supporting NEW in whatever way you can because they are really moving the needle on inclusion within the construction industry. I have to thank our panel for doing such a phenomenal job. So clapping all around thank you for this real discussion during this critical time. I truly appreciate you all being there. And thank you for everyone that tuned in for this workshop. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I think we all have.